Okay, welcome everybody to the Courageous Possibilities podcast. And for today, I am so excited because we are doing the first of an Inspiring Stories series where we're going to bring some beautiful, wonderful guests on who have been on their own journey of courage, following their heart, and explored possibilities that maybe earlier in their lives they did not know was where they were going to go. And today I'm super excited to introduce you to one of my mentors that I met through a course that I did. And her name is the beautiful Marina Nabão. I'm going to just read a teeny little bit about her so you know where we're starting and what we're doing today with Marina. Welcome. Sorry, Marina. Everyone can see your face.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much
having
for
me
being
here.
So Marina Nabão is a body enthusiast, passionate about the wisdom and healing power of our bodies and all the ways we are able to integrate mind-body spirituality in a conscious and loving way so we can thrive. As a somatic trauma healer and embodiment coach, she supports people who are trapped in the chains of past trauma and have a desire to reclaim their sovereign power, innate freedom, and erotic aliveness. Oh, I'm going to keep reading it because this is so beautiful. Her somatic healing and coaching is a deeply transformative experience for leaders and care providers of all sorts. In the session, she weaves deep energy alchemy, somatic experiencing, breath coaching, nonviolent communication, and the deep wisdom of shamanic and indigenous traditions such as Taoism, Tantra, spirit mediumship, and Afro-Brazilian spirituality. Wow. Welcome, 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 Marina. It's interesting reading all of those. I wonder when you were a child if you saw those on your path ahead. um, as we open today, actually, that would be something I would really love to hear a little bit about. And like, what is the journey or the highlights of the journey that brought you to where you are today?
Oh gosh, to have time.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, well, as a child, I was always very curious around spirituality. I grew up in a family of yoginis. My mom is a yogini, my sister is as well. So there was an environment that was very open to this perception that we are one with the divine, that we are a reflection of the divine. And I grew up with those, with that kind of information, with that kind of invitation. I remember in our house, my mom was devoted to Paramahansa Yogananda from the Self-Realization Fellowship. I attended service at
Mhm.
the fellowship for a number of years. And I remember we had photos of him in different places of the house with little altars, with little offerings. So there was a way that for me, this way of viewing life through a spiritual lens has been with me from the beginning. And I have always been very curious. Like I I went to the Methodist church with a cousin of mine and did some education around that. And I attended Catholic service with my grandparents. So there was a mix. And Brazil is a country that is very open to different religious experiences. Um, but although the piece around embodiment was present because of yoga, I never thought that would be where I would end up, much less doing trauma healing. Right? My mom is also a psychologist, so the mental health care is there, the tending to people's, mental health is there. But I first diverted a lot before I arrived here. I went into business, I developed a career in business as an adult before I transitioned and really landed in this chapter, this beautiful chapter of my life. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I love hearing that actually. I've read Autobiography of a Yogi, and this is an
Mhm.
amazing thing to have been immersed in as a child, and to have begun to, yeah, sort of be influenced by from such an early age. And in there you talked about embodiment. And so I'd actually feel like it would be really wonderful if you could define that, for anybody that's listening that sort of heard that word around the place but isn't quite sure what we mean when we say embodiment.
Yeah. I think embodiment is a very big word that we can approach from different perspectives. So I will give a definition that actually fits the work that I do,
Mhm.
and knowing that that's probably not the definition that people will see everywhere. But for me, embodiment in the work that I do in the context of somatic work is the process of intentionally coming back to your awareness of what is going on in your soma. Your soma is your living body, is in its wholeness. Your soma is your body, your mind, your emotions, your energy. And I dare to add spirit. Not everybody talks about spirit when they talk about soma, but for me, they cannot be disconnected. I cannot connect with my living body without connecting with this force of life that for me is spirit, that for me is something that is bigger than this human incarnated body. So, in that context, embodiment can be the process of intentionally reconnecting to the soma, befriending the soma, so that we can learn to access different layers of information that are beyond the mind. The mind is a piece of the soma. The mind, unfortunately, is a piece that can get conditioned very easily, and sometimes can lead us to forget about the truth of who we are. And for me, the truth of who we are is that we are one with the divine. We are, part of the divine. We are an expression of the goddess, of God, of divinity, however people like to talk about it. And in this process of embodiment, there is greater perception of what is going on first in our physical bodies, the language that our physical bodies use to talk to us, which are the sensations, which is the felt sense, which is a little broader than sensations, emotions, impulses, movements, behaviors, posture, all of that.
Mhm.
So embodiment is actually becoming aware of all of it, right? And by becoming aware, we develop intimacy with this soma, with this living body in its wholeness. And by developing intimacy with it, we can start accessing the wisdom that is here. We can start accessing the pieces of ourselves that are not completely conditioned by the mind, by culture, by religion, by trauma, by
Mm.
the experiences of life.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does actually. I'm even just I'm aware as you're sharing and you're saying the word soma as like somatic, and that I've
Mm.
never really heard it used in that way before, and actually really was potentially, even though I use the phrase somatic in some of the work that I do, I don't think I've ever heard soma separately described like that. So thank you for sharing that. And I definitely feel like spirit belongs in amongst what's going on in this like
Yeah.
physical life form that we're moving around in. So I'm really curious actually just to sort of pull that into what I'm so excited about on this podcast. And that is, so when somebody gets back into this body, and as you said, like is less influenced from the mind where it can get a bit more conditioned, and they're back, this work that you do, that helps people to feel safe, to be back, to allow themselves to experience it. What do you see like becoming possible? Like what else is possible as we explore that embodiment
Mm.
experience?
Yeah. What is not?
Mm. Yes.
Well, I do think that from that perspective, when we are accessing, when we're doing somatic work, so just to say, so somatic comes from soma, right? That's why I like to define soma. And somatics is the approach, the healing approach, the approach to the whole experience of coming back to wholeness. So when we're doing somatic work, we're actually bringing integration to the different layers of the self, the mind, the body, the emotions, the energy, the spirit, right? And when we're able to integrate these deeper layers of self in my own personal life, in my own lived experience, and also in the experience of so many of my clients, so many of my students, what I notice is that there is much more repertoire. There's much more information available for us to guide us through life, to guide us in our decisions, to guide us into connecting with the desires of our souls, not the desires implanted from marketing, which is different, authentic stuff, authentic desires. There is much more capacity, much more aliveness, much more vitality to also support us creating the lives that we want to create, to live the lives in the terms, in the ways that we want or that we desire the most. Of course, the whole creating the life you want, living the life you want is a very beautiful concept that we do need to take into consideration the limitations that people have due to culture, due to holding marginalized identities, due to just being in this world that is not equal in opportunities for everybody. So I like to always make that little, note on this conversation. But what I notice is when we tune in to the deeper layers of ourselves and we have much more integration between all of them, it's almost like we're actually more in touch with the truth of who we are. And when we are more in touch with the truth of who we are, our actions, our decisions, I dare to say, our thoughts, they're more aligned with our true selves, right? And in that sense, it becomes, for me, I would see it as a life that becomes much richer, a life that becomes much more filled with colors, with possibilities, because we're not operating from, expectations from outside, from what we learned we should want, we should have, we should seek as happiness, as the truth of life. And then we can have an experience of life that is uniquely aligned with what we actually came to do here, because I do believe that each one of us has a purpose. I don't believe that the purpose is grandiosity for everybody, right? So again, just adding that note here, it's important. But for some people, the purpose is to, in this lifetime, experience love, romantic love and partnership in a deeper level for the first time. And that's it. For other people, the purpose is to support others in activism, in healthcare, in whatever it is. For some people, the purpose is to teach or to. So I think that for me, the experience of reconnecting to the body, the process of embodiment, of attuning to the different layers of the soma, and really aligning and integrating them is an experience of more life being available for us. More life, more possibilities, more energy to seek the possibilities, the opportunities that we want as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I love all of that. And what I'm hearing in there is a little bit of, my mind particularly caught on the word wholeness, and this sort of more feeling of that integrated one being of yourself. whether people connect to the idea of being connected to all that is, or just being at home, like at home in yourself, right? And feeling like the you that you get to be in this life reflects the truth of who you are. And something to some extent that I dare suggest from myself is that actually when people find that, it becomes, I want to use the phrase like selfish, but in a good way, right? Because you're coming towards life for yourself, but there's this innate respect for others. Like once you find that respect for yourself, and once you find that compassion for yourself, once you find this love for self, just automatically the conflicts that existed before, it's like the conflicts you've healed inside, you're no longer creating dramatically, not saying, speaking to that everybody has different, as you were so beautifully put, has a different experience of life and what they've been born into. But to the extent that we're aware that we get drawn into dramas at times that potentially we don't need to be, and the more that we do this work, you know, and you can stand up for things that you really believe in, and yet it still comes from almost a place of love, you know, it feels different. It feels like the energy is more swimming in the same sea rather than creating more storms.
Yes. Yeah, totally agree. And I actually think that we have more energy available to fight for the things we want. In this lifetime, I was an activist for racial democracy in Brazil for many years, almost a decade. And was involved in community organizing, working with marginalized populations within my own country and all of that. So my experience of activism taught me a lot around the importance of activists having a very good well of energy available for the work they're doing, because it's very consuming for people to keep fighting for change in a world that, you know, doesn't always want change, especially when we're talking about, you know, racism, transphobia, homophobia, xenophobia, all of that. So I do believe that there is a piece around the individual journey of healing and integrating that is actually very supportive of the collective healing and integrating. I actually do think that many times people are in complete apathy towards what's happening in the world, and not even in the world. We don't need to go outside that far. What is happening with your neighbors? What is happening with the community next to your neighborhood? What's happening in the next town or the next city? And people are in completely apathy, not doing anything to change injustices, to change suffering, because there is no space here, there is no energy available here, because that integration is not here.
Yeah.
There's too much fragmentation still. So for me, the individual process of integration, healing, of embodiment, of accessing the wisdom of the Soma is deeply and directly connected to how we are able to show up in the world without also getting sick. Because to be honest, I did get sick in my years of activism, because it was so much that I put into it that there was a way that it was impacting my health,
Yeah.
right? So how about actually having more here and give from an overflowing place and act from a place of overflow?
Yeah. Yes. And actually see that particular pattern. It's funny because we hear it so often. They say, put on your oxygen mask first, or fill your cup first. And sometimes it's just not obvious to see how to do that. So, I mean, actually a question that I'd love to ask you is like, where is this sort of baby step into this kind of work that you do, that this is work that you offer and help people as they find that integration and that connection to more life force and energy? So many people are exhausted and tired and burned out. Is like a number one challenge. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like what would your advice be?
Yeah, well, for me, Joe, I do think that the first step is like manage your stress levels. Because,
Yeah.
you know, the way that people live, especially in countries that are very economically developed and where there is so much high expectations to be super successful, not just to make a living, but to making the living and all of that. There's so much pressure in people's nervous systems today that they are operating in a go, go, go mode all the time. Like when I moved to the US 5 years ago, and I realized the amount of hours that many Americans work every week. The fact that they don't have, like in Brazil, we have 30 days of paid vacation every year.
Yeah.
And here, that's a no. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even going to enter the topic of maternity leave now that I'm pregnant because it's too intense for me right now. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, if we don't manage our levels of stress, of course, our brains will keep us disconnected from this body because this body cannot operate in that high activation all the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? This body cannot operate in, well, the fear of violence in big cities, and then the traffic, and then the pollution, and then how many hours you have to work, and then, not having a healthy enough diet, not having healthy enough movement habits, and so on. It's so much for a person's bodies and nervous system that it's no wonder that people, for me, there is, especially in Western economically developed countries, there is an epidemic of disembodiment, of disconnection with the deeper layers of the soma, of disconnection with the truth of the self, of disconnection with spirit apart from religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because there's no space for that.
Yeah.
There is no space. So the number one baby step, which is not so baby, it's
Yeah.
grown up,
Yes.
is actually to start questioning lifestyle, to start questioning, values even, to start, do I always need more? Do I always need to consume more? Do I not always need a bigger house, a more expensive car, nicer clothes, more, 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 more? What is a place of enoughness?
Mm-hmm.
What is a place where I can have comfort? I can live a life of financial and material dignity while also living a life of spiritual dignity, a life of well being in the body, a life of well being with my health, right? If we don't start shifting that piece, I think everything that we do in order to embody and reconnect, it works, yes, but it's like, little drops in an ocean. It's very little. So for me, the first step is that, and when I work with clients one-on-one, I actually want to know what their lifestyle is like. And if it's too intense, too chaotic, that will be an invitation that I will make to them to
Mm-hmm.
reassess that. I will actually do some psychosomatic education around the impacts of this high level of stress in their bodies, in their nervous systems, and how this is actually contributing to the experience of being disconnected, of unhappiness, of numbness, of not enjoying pleasure, not enjoying sex, not enjoying anything.
Yeah.
You don't even enjoy an ice cream because
Yeah.
you're in a rush while you're eating it. You don't
Yeah.
even feel the flavor of it.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that is the first piece. And then from there, choosing the approaches that make sense to you. Because as I said, embodiment is a very big word. Doing a nice yoga class, but real yoga, yoga that is
This is
bringing
connecting.
integration,
Yeah.
that is connecting. It's not about performance, the
Mm-hmm.
hottest body. Um, it is a process of embodiment. Dancing, having another kind of movement or physical activity, doing somatic work, which is the work that I offer, that is a deeper layer of it, right? For me, it's not so much about which modality is better than which modality. It's more what works for you right now at this step of your journey. What feels more sustainable? What feels more attractive to you as at least a starting point, right? Breathing classes. Nobody breathes correctly here. So let's learn to breathe again,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And actually the word in there that really stood out to me was well, spaciousness, and how can we create more space for space. But also sustainability, because I guess that whole busyness and finding what's sustainable, that was just, yes, absolutely, that lands. And something that comes to me, and I wonder how you feel about this. I think this was a phrase that I learned during VITA, was this idea of taking radical responsibility for our own process. And to some extent, people might be thinking, oh, well, that's very good and well for some, but I'm too busy to think about that. I can't possibly not do anything in my life. Actually, it's all really important. And actually, part of the invitation of radical responsibility is going, just a second, like, what is true, and what do you really want, and what are you willing to do to help you start to allow your body to align with that, to connect with that desire. Yeah.
Well, and I think radical responsibility is a rather revolutionary concept for most folks, especially when you're so conditioned to want a certain, collection of things, of structures in your life, because that's how you grew up, because that's how everybody in your family does, everybody in your culture, as everybody who's deemed successful in your culture does. So for me, the concept of radical responsibility, that in the context of VITA, the program that you took, is connected with the tantric view of life, is a concept that is actually daring the structures, that is actually daring the status quo, right? That's why I say it's revolutionary.
Yeah, I like that word, actually, throwing out daring, because it is daring, right?
It is. So I cannot sustain this lifestyle. It's too much. I cannot work 70 hours a week. I cannot see my kids just for 3 hours each day. I cannot continue eating fast food because I don't have time. I cannot not exercise. I cannot, a bunch of things,
Yeah.
right? Taking radical responsibility for me means making the harder choices. Can you downsize? Maybe you don't need to live in the house that you pay so much every year for. Can you live with less? And for me, I do think that this whole conversation, Joe, is also a questioning of how capitalism is a structure that traps us. The way that we're experiencing capitalism right now. I like to say maybe capitalism could be more balanced. It could be less aggressive. I don't know, right? But the way that we experience capitalism right now to the extremes, and in societies where the economical development is further ahead in the curve, that's even more apparent, that's even more visible, is causing harm. Yeah, so radical responsibility is also questioning that and making the changes. And for me, that's revolutionary. For me, that's not the majority of people that is ready to make those decisions, that's ready to make those changes, right? But the possibilities are there, the invitations are there.
That's it. That's it. And
Yeah.
that's where it takes courage, right? It takes courage. It actually even takes courage just to look at ourselves, you know,
Mhm.
to be self-reflective when we've been kind of just on the railway train, letting life take us in the direction, as you say, that society and culture and family and all of that. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, what am I actually, did I choose to be on this train? Is this even where I want to be going? So yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for taking this time, for being with me here. I am excited to share all of your details in the show notes, but can you just, for the recordings purposes, share how people can find you, or where they can go to look for more work from you, more of your offerings?
Mhm. Yeah, for folks who are curious about the journey of embodiment and somatic work, I really invite you to come to my website, marinanabao.com. I'm sure it's going to be in the show notes for you to click. You don't need to memorize that, but that's where you will find out more about the work that I do, especially my individual sessions where we go really deep in somatic work, in trauma healing work, and in embodiment. So yeah, I'm also on Instagram, not every day, not all the time. You know, there's enoughness of social
Mhm.
media for me. But I'm also there, and I would love to connect. Marina Nabão as well on Instagram.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marina. That was amazing conversation, and so many topics that have now been planted some seeds to allow people to see what else is possible, what courageous steps they might like to take for their own embodiment and alignment, and accessing more of their own life force energy, perhaps. And yeah, thank you so much for being here with me. We'll finish up
Been a
there.
pleasure.
Thank you.